Well, everyone, thank you so much for coming. I'm happy to see such a big group of people interested in public service fellowships. My name is Vicki Johnson. I'm the founder of ProFellow.com, which is the leading online resource for information on professional and academic fellowships. And I was just like many of you many years ago looking for fellowships. When I was an undergrad, I went to Cornell, graduated in 2001. And so my very first fellowship outside of Cornell was the New York City Urban Fellows Program, which is a service fellowship in New York City government. And from there, I did several other fellowships. I did one in Germany, did one in Washington, D.C., and I did one in New Zealand. So this topic in particular is near and dear to my heart because I had a career in public service and public policy for 15 years before I went the entrepreneurship route. So I'm excited to share the huge number of fellowship opportunities that are available to all of you, and also give you some tips on how to make your application stand out. So how many of you are familiar with ProFellow? Has anyone been to the site before? Okay, some of you have. Now, in this workshop, you are welcome to have your computer open because I'd like to show all of you how to use our massive database of fellowships. So we've purposely created this database so that it would be easy to search, skimmable, you can bookmark. So it's not like a lot of the university databases. It's a little more intuitive, a little more friendly, but there is still some tips and tricks to using it because it has 1,100 fellowship opportunities in there. So I'm just curious, actually, too, have any of you applied for fellowships so far? Or one person? Fulbright? Anybody doing Fulbright? No? Okay. Well, then we have a brand new group. Let me first start with what are fellowships? We define fellowships as short-term funded opportunities to do something exceptional. So essentially, they're grants for individuals to do a short-term work placement full-time in an industry or area that you want. Some of them also can fund you to do self-designed projects, so almost like a mini grant to go and do something that you designed. There's also fellowships that help you get your foot in the door into government, nonprofit sector, international development, foreign service. So there's all sorts of different types of fellowships. And there's also a wide range beyond public service as well. So if you're interested in education, engineering, science, creative arts, there's a whole wide range. So at ProFellow.com, like I said, we've got more than 1,100 fellowships listed. And during the workshop, I'm going to have you guys create your free account so you can go into the database. Because before this workshop is done, I want each of you to find at least one opportunity that you're sort of psyched to apply to, whether it's this year or maybe in a few years. So I told you already a little bit about myself, that I did 4 fellowships. I'm losing my voice, so I might take some breaks as we go through as I drink my tea. I sort of stumbled upon fellowships, so I really wanted to share with you. I used to do really deep internet research, networked. I wasn't like somebody that was well connected, or I wasn't even a top student or anyone that was recruited for fellowships. I just sort of found the Urban Fellows program, and I got into that first program that sort of got me hooked into it. And so I started talking to other fellows to learn about, well, how did you guys win these things? I mean, there's hundreds of applicants for, say, like 10 spots. And I started to find themes across how people went about their applications. So the other thing I like to do is share through ProFellow how to win fellowships. Now, the agenda for the workshop today. 1, I'm going to show you how to use the database. So you'll create your account right here. And we're going to go and I'm going to show you some tricks like keywords you can use, how to find the right location. Maybe you'll be open-minded, you'll find something cool. Then I'm going to also tell you what you need to know about service fellowships. There's kind of a wide range. So there's a lot of different experiences that you can have on a fellowship. They have varying levels of stipends. Job prospects also vary post-fellowship. So I'm going to talk to you about each type of fellowship and what you need to know before you apply. And also then go into the strategies for a competitive application. And then also more resources so that you can win your fellowship this year. So first, using the ProFellow database. Now, I'm going to sit down. If you guys can go on your computers, you don't have to, but you go to your computers to ProFellow.com and create your account at the homepage. It should take just about a minute or two. I'm going to use this minute to restore my voice a little bit. You can also do it on mobile if you have your phone. And just so you know, we don't give away, sell, use, do anything with your personal information on the site. We do encourage you to sign up for our mailing list because we actually send you calls for applications and articles and tips and tell you about our upcoming workshops. But everything is secure. This isn't like you're suddenly going to get credit card spam. And then once you guys are in, just let me know. I know it takes a few minutes to like put in who you are and what you do, but I think when you first come in, you'll be at your profile page, or you may be, depending on which browser you're in, you may be directly directed here. So this was like my profile page. I filled that all in. And then what you want to do is go to fellowships, which is where the database lives. Maybe just look up if you're like, once you're in the database. You guys are in? Yes, you're fast. Okay. As you can see, we have 1,171 results. So let me just go through like the different filters here. Fellowship type. So when you're looking at the different fellowship types, there are fellowships that fund graduate studies. So if you're thinking to do a master's or PhD, postdoctoral research is post-PhD. Professional is the ones that function more like jobs or even grants to do self-designed projects. There's also ones that fund some undergraduate study. There's not as many fellowships for undergrads while they're enrolled, but there are some summer-related and sort of some tuition-based undergraduate fellowships. There's also, which also could be of interest, summer fellowships, which are for all students that function like paid internships. And then there's doctoral study fellowships, which is specifically for PhD. So how many of you are seniors? Okay. And then are any of you below senior undergrad? Okay, great. You're prepared. You're coming early. And then graduate students, a couple grad students. Awesome. Okay. So if you're thinking about a fellowship that you want to do starting next year, like summer or fall after you graduate, this is the right time to look because deadlines are typically between now and January for fellowships that would start in the summer or in the fall of next year. So if you're looking for professional fellowships, you would start by putting in professional. Now for discipline, of course, all of you are here to look at public service fellowships, and that is actually one of our disciplines in our list. As you can see, these are really broad disciplines. So let's say you're like, wait, I want to do archaeology or something. We actually have a keyword search up here to use for much smaller subdisciplines. But for the most part, we've kind of bucketed things under these very broad categories just so that we wouldn't make it too difficult to search or too kind of refined. And it's actually good to keep your search open. I mean, public service covers everything from just working in nonprofits and government, social impact, even social entrepreneurship, teaching. There's a lot of things that can bucket under that. And public policy is a big one too. So you can pick public service as a way to further filter down. So now we're down to 334. Now location, this is also broad. We have it just by general region because to put all 100 countries would be, it just made the database kind of wonky. But again, you can also search in the keyword bar by country. So if you were saying you wanted to do Germany, you could search by that. If you wanted to do Washington, D.C., you could do that and it'll show Washington, D.C. So you can do cities, countries, states. If for some reason, like you type something in and it's showing nothing, it may not necessarily mean there isn't something there. But these are for those kind of location specific. Also, I'm not sure if you put in like DC with the periods, I don't think some may show up but less. So it's better try different variations of keywords. But let's say, but you could, I like to keep location open because some of you might be thinking, oh, I could do a US one, I could do an international one. Hey, so keep it open, see what comes up. That way you would take out Washington. Citizenship, if you're a US citizen, it's good to put in, your United States citizenship. But also if you're an international student, there's a lot of fellowships open to international students too, both in the US or if you're wanted to go to another country. So put in your citizenship. That's kind of a good way to filter out ones that you're not eligible for. And then work experience, I like to keep this open typically when I'm doing a search. But if you're a recent graduate, less than 5 years is going to bucket those fellowships that are geared toward recent graduates or the seniors who are about to graduate. Sometimes, though, it's kind of good not to have the work experience filter on because there are a lot of fellowships that don't have any sort of age or work experience requirements, so they wouldn't have that tag on them. So if you can keep it broad, or if you want to look into that less than 5 years, for those of you that are in grad school, you might have more work experience. But again, if you put in 5 to 10 years of work experience, it might show up only ones, again, that are looking specifically for people between like age 25 and 40. So just keep that in mind. But, let's keep it broad. Now, let's see. Now, if this was me and I had U.S. Citizenship, public service as my discipline professional, now I still have 302 results. So maybe there's like I said, a city, a location, a topic that you're really interested in. I mean, maybe you're interested in urban studies. You can put in a word like urban and see what comes up. This is one of my favorites. The Urban Leaders Fellowship is a 7-week paid summer fellowship for people at early to mid-career. And you can work in one of 9 cities with a focus on policy and practice. So you're working closely at a mayor's office or other agency. New York City Urban Fellows Program is the one that I did for recent graduates. And that has a January deadline. So that's a 1 year working in New York City government. I was actually part of the 9/11 class. So I started my fellowship 1 week before 9/11. So we were in our cohort and then we witnessed 9/11 from the steps of City Hall. So that was a really life-changing experience for me. I was actually interested in education reform and policy. And then I chose to we were still in orientation. I chose to do my placement in emergency management at that office. And then I worked in emergency preparedness and management for 15 years. So these are life-changing opportunities. So you could go into it thinking you're going to do one thing and then end up having a totally different track or interest. There's other ones in here like Pulse Pittsburgh. So what I'm going to do, let's take 5 minutes, have a go. Oh, and I also want to show you that little star button there. You can bookmark them to your account. So you're like, oh, that sounds cool. Bookmark it. And then later on, when you want to find that, you click Show Favorites. And it'll be saved here with other ones. But fool around. And then you can ask me questions during this time, or maybe we can wait 5 minutes and then I'm gonna start calling and see what you guys came up with that you thought was interesting in here. You can also search if you know of a fellowship you kind of vaguely heard of. You can type it in and see if it comes up. So just give 5 minutes for you guys to go through that. We need some music while we're...
Is there a way to filter what the required level of education is? Because I'm getting a lot of ones that are for law graduates.
Oh, are you looking at law with your...
Yeah, because when I put law, there are opportunities for pre-law people, but also a lot for law students.
Probably, it's funny, we do put in... See, a lot of them don't have a work experience requirement, so it's hard you don't want to filter out too much. So I would say if you're interested in law, but you don't want to necessarily, try to skim through, how many results do you have in your list there to skim?
About 200.
200? You could take law off if you don't want to see the law related ones, but if you do, if you're trying to find the recent graduates, I would put in the work experience less than 5 years.
Yeah.
See if that would help your search a little bit.
I'd already done that.
Oh, okay. Let's see. I'm going to do it too. Is this what you're seeing? 95 results. Did you put in your type? Professional?
Oh yeah, I think I have more because I have more than one type.
Okay. Yeah, you could So if you want to look at maybe just professional ones first, or just look at graduate school ones, or the graduate school ones are mainly to fund, tuition and expenses for graduate school. So they're quite different than professional fellowships that function more like jobs. So if you're an international student, you can also put the keyword international students in. Wait, I think I have too many filters now. That doesn't make sense that I have US. Okay. The other thing too is you can sort by deadlines, so you can see which deadlines are coming up or are farther out. And newest just means newly added to the database versus ones that have been there for a long time. So what's that? Sure, yeah, let's do it. Does anyone else have questions, or is there like a certain keyword you might need? I know all the secrets to the keywords in the database, so maybe you're looking for something in China, maybe you're looking for something in social entrepreneurship, housing policy, poverty.
Did you say if there was a way for a 3-month summer versus year-long?
Yeah. The summer ones are going to be this specifically for summer. That's under type, so you could look under summer fellowship. Yeah. And again, I should say it is good to look for those now, because a lot of people wait till the spring, and then they're like, oh, all the deadlines have passed. So the deadlines are they'll be in the fall and the winter. I'm curious if anyone struck gold yet. Did anyone find something that they're psyched about or want to learn more about? No? Just overwhelmed by the information?
I think my keywords might be too general, because I'm getting there's some for our high schoolers and stuff.
Oh, high schoolers?
There was one where it was for 10th grade, and I was confused.
Really? There really shouldn't be any high school ones. Okay, wait, let me see.
Or maybe it meant sophomore in college, but the fact they said 10th grade.
Okay, let me try to find that one.
Let me see. I can try and find it. It was for
Oh, the Washington World Fellows Program?
Yeah.
Academic fellowship, 10th grade students. Yeah, that's an odd one. Yeah, actually, I mean, most everything in here should be for sort of college level and higher. But sometimes things are added by people.
So is it open? So it's open for people to just add to?
Well, they send it to our staff who add them. This one, that's an odd one, because this might be one of the only ones for high school students in here. But are you looking for something short term in
summer? Yeah. So
yeah.
I have that flagged. Now I searched keyword environment. I'm thinking more of
Yeah, if you're interested in environmental policy, just actually we've tagged a lot of them with the word environment.
Yeah, that one that's the list I'm looking at.
So yeah, these are, yes.
Yeah.
Keep in mind too, there's also, even if it didn't have the word environment, it doesn't necessarily mean you couldn't do an environmentally focused project or work. If you were looking for a policy fellowship in a congressional office, you could be working on that. So sometimes it's good to keep your search kind of broad. If you're interested in policy in general, public policy, there's tons of public policy fellowships in the database. We have one like data science and health policy. Public health is like another big word if you're into health. International affairs. And that's the other thing too, although public service is kind of a broader discipline, there could be other disciplines here that you're interested in. So like international affairs would have a lot of the international fellowships, law, technology, communications. I mean, a lot of these things sometimes have overlapping disciplines or they're interdisciplinary. Is there anyone looking for a certain type of fellowship that they're hoping like that would be a match for what they want to do? So are any of you guys looking for summer fellowships or hoping more for like a job type fellowship when you graduate? Summer fellowships? Okay. Job, okay.
How many people are summer? Raise your hand.
Okay, summer,
And
okay.
How many people are full time?
Looking for full time. Okay, about half and half. Okay. Yeah, so summer fellowship is good. There's also some that might be tagged short term if they're just like a few months, but it might not specifically be in the summertime, which is what you might be looking for. But yeah, if you're looking for something like a full-time job, then you would want to look into professional. Are any of you thinking about going to grad school like right after you graduate? Right after undergrad? No. Okay, I'm surprised. I think it's good, to go out and do something and see what you're interested in before grad school. All right, have you guys bookmarked at least one fellowship? Yeah, most of you guys have? Okay. See, and so what is it, Thursday? It's a Thursday. So this weekend and Monday is Veterans Day. I think you guys would have off. You can spend the weekend perusing the database, looking for interesting things. The other thing I want to mention is that we have articles about a lot of these fellowships. So we interview former fellows about their experience and their application tips. So if you were to, I had the Capital Fellows up here, I know we've done interviews and have even promoted their fellowship. So you could search that. This top key bar actually searches the entire site where we have articles and content. So if you search by Capital Fellows, you'll see they have their open calls for applications. I thought we had an interview with someone at some point. Let's see. But the Capital Fellows program, I think they recruit here because that's in Sacramento. It's for the to work in California state government, which is another interesting way to get into kind of government and public service. But they came out to this event last time. Oh, this is Capital Cities. This is in DC. Okay, well, I just realized that we haven't interviewed somebody in a while. It looks like. But yes, you'll find, so if you do search for, I think I had that Urban Leaders Fellowship. You can also often dig up interesting articles. And the other thing is too, if we've done an interview with somebody, I could probably introduce you to that person directly if you wanted to learn about the fellowship experience. So yeah, on our articles page here, this is where you can find sort of all of our latest articles. This person that we just interviewed, she's at the Montgomery County Council's, they're doing a summer fellowship. This is in Maryland, but this is the summer fellowship in local government in Maryland. I don't know if any of you are from there, but she just talks about the benefits of the fellowship, tips for applying. And she's a student at University of Maryland College Park. But often these fellowships, even these kind of more locally based ones, they often are looking for people from other states and other cities to come and check out, policymaking in a different place. So I know the New York City Urban Fellows program I did was for people from all over the country. So they weren't looking for just people from New York City. So so anybody else have any questions while we're in the database? Any other questions about how to find certain types of things that you might be looking for? Do most of you want to stay in the Bay Area? Or are you thinking leave town, get out, go broader or go back home? I don't know. International? Yeah. I know Cultural Vistas has some interesting fellowships in Europe. We have one in, they had this Congress Bundestag. It says youth exchange, but this can be up to age 24. And then some of these you might come across and you'll find that they're for more people with more experience. But I say it's worthwhile to kind of bookmark those and think about that as you're going through your career. So if you see that it needs 5 to 10 years of work experience and you're not there, it's always worthwhile to just still go ahead and bookmark and keep that in mind as you're working in these next couple of years, because you can sort of get the skills and experiences that you need to make yourself have a competitive application for that program. For example, like the Alpha Fellowship in Russia, this is a really prestigious fellowship in a country that, has been in the news quite a bit recently. For this kind of fellowship, professional fellowship, this could set you up if you're interested in like a foreign service, international affairs career. This can give you expertise in a country that you wouldn't otherwise maybe have much experience with. And but this one also requires that you have some language training. So if you knew that now and you knew, okay, this is looking for people with maybe at least 5 years of work experience and some Russian proficiency, you might consider that might be worthwhile to get some Russian language skills as you're going through the next couple of years of your career, if you had your eye on something like this. But this is really interesting because they take Americans and people from the UK, and it's just some of these are just really unique, and you also sort of get to build your own program abroad. So I did a German Chancellor Fellowship where I got to do a self-designed project. I did this fellowship actually, it was about 2 years, after I got 2 years of experience in New York City government, I did the German Chancellor Fellowship. So they're looking for people, though, with some level of work experience. I was on the younger end of the cohort that I was in, but I was working in a really interesting topic at the time, the emergency management, because it was right around, 9/11, the Iraq War. So I kind of built a project around something that was really newsworthy. And I think that's sort of what gave my application an edge when I was applying for this with relatively low, limited work experience. So that's the kind of thing too, like think about what fields that you're working in, what's in the news, where are the skill sets and expertise that employers are looking for right now. And then you can always keep your sights on one of these prestigious fellowships. Okay, why don't I get into the nitty gritty of like sort of what you need to know about each of these fellowships. So I'm gonna put this down and get back to here. I think I'll sit down again. All right. Now, fellowship options in public service. All right, so the first one is fellowships with work placements in U.S. nonprofits and foundations. So as you go through the database, you might find, especially in the philanthropic sector and some of the nonprofits, especially based in D.C. and other big cities, they have these anywhere from 6 months to 2-year work placement that are called fellowships. And if they're recruiting for recent graduates, you're basically coming into the fellowship to function like a staff member. Now, even though you're called a fellow, which in many circles might give the impression that you have like a PhD or you're doing something really high level, sometimes some of these fellows programs, you're still doing relatively entry level work, but you're doing it maybe at a more challenging level because you're going, it's a competitive application process and they're looking for people with certain skill sets and ambitions for this. But what I think is important for any of these is, really research the quality of the work placement by talking to the former fellows. So you can actually get very limited information about a fellowship from the website. I mean, you won't really know what is this really like, what's the ins and outs. They may even paint a rosy picture on the website when it might be a totally different experience. I also say it's worth talking to like several fellows because someone might have had a bad experience and somebody else had a great experience. So try to figure out like why did two different fellows have different experiences. But I think these can be a really, really good foot in the door. I did a professional fellowship at a think tank in Washington, D.C. called the Herbert Scoville Jr. Peace Fellowship. And that was a 6-month fellowship. And I actually got to choose from 25 different think tanks to work in. But when I was at the think tank, I realized that they got hundreds of applications for one unpaid internship. And I thought, oh my gosh, like I didn't realize the level of competition for even just the unpaid internships. So these are really, really good foot in the door. So the pro is too, a lot of them are structured really well where you get mentorship, professional development. You might be in a cohort with other people. So they might have some programming around that. So it's a really good foot in the door. The downside is often the stipends are pretty low. So be prepared. Like you could be paid anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000. And so you might want to think about where you're living. So what's sad is that the New York City Urban Fellows Program has the same stipend that it did when I did it almost 20 years ago. I mean, it's still $30,000 to live in New York City. So I'm thinking, how can they survive? Because I barely survived back in 2001. So that's a huge, and I've talked to them too, like, why have you not increased the pay? It's ridiculous. But so just look at that. Just make sure you understand sort of, how do people survive in New York City on $30,000? The other thing too, some of these, like they might only have one fellow embedded in their organization. So you will get hundreds of applicants for that one position. So just be aware of that. I think the cohort-based ones where they're picking 10 or 15 people, I think are really worthwhile to go for because one, you get the cohort experience, and then two, just a little less competitive, although they're still pretty competitive. Here's just a couple. So like the Virginia G. Piper Charitable Trust Resident Scholars, this is actually based in Phoenix. And so they pick a recent graduate each year, and it's a 2-year position, and you get to work in a philanthropic organization. Great foot in the door, you make a new connection, live in a new place, and you're completely set up. And through that, they have professional development. This is a more local one, the Greenlining Institute. They have these advocacy fellowships. They work in different areas, and they're looking at all sorts of social impact, immigration. They're based out in Oakland. So, that's like working at the Greenlining Institute with the staff as one of the fellows. But they have a cohort of several fellows a year. So that's kind of like a nice cohort experience. And, you'd still be here in the Bay Area. So that's just a few examples. Now, government fellowships are the ones where you're going to be based at a local, state, or federal agency or something like a congressional body, state parliament, that sort of thing. So again, short-term, full-time work placements. And the idea that most of these programs are set up fellows programs because they're trying to recruit people to work in that local, state, or federal government long-term. So they're looking for talent. They have graying, old, aging workforces, and they're trying to figure out, how do we recruit young people into these career tracks? That's an important thing to know because when you're applying to one of these, you want to touch on your desire to work in government long-term in that location because that's what they're looking for, even if they don't specifically state it on their website. Like I said, it's really good to get a foot in the door. I don't know if any of you have ever tried out like the usajobs.gov website where you spend hours and then you submit and you're like, never hear anything. It's like a dark hole of nothingness. So, I've applied for jobs through USA, got jobs that I thought I was like super highly qualified for and heard nothing. So this is a good way to get your foot in the door into government. So even at the federal level, sometimes you're doing a fellowship almost as a contractor. And then you got the in to figure out sometimes you might end up working with somebody in the government who is actually an official federal employee who will set up a position for you so that you can apply to it and you've got the external in. I think that's part of the reason resumes that go into USA Jobs get lost and never heard from is because they're actually positions that are already set up for people that are already working in government. So it's a really hard sometimes to get your foot in the door at these various levels. And even, it's either you have to like know somebody or intern or do something. So this is a great way. The only bad thing about the government fellowships is you might get into your 1-year government fellowship and hoping to stay on in the same agency, thinking like, yes, they want me for this long-term thing, but they're subject to budget cuts. They usually have annual budgets that they have to get affirmed every year. So there's no guarantee that you can stay in that particular spot for that year. However, during your year, it's really important, build your network in the government fellowship. Like, don't just talk to just your boss, like meet other people that you're working with, sort of complementing your work. Keep your eye open for job openings and don't wait until the end of the fellowship. Start looking even 3-4 months into your fellowship for job openings at the level that you'd be working at. And that's how you sort of get your way into government. Now, as you know, government jobs have great benefits. I mean, they have full package benefits. Even when I actually worked for a short period in San Francisco local government, and they just like upped our salaries like automatically every 6 months or something. It was like some union thing. So, I mean, they do have really great benefits. So if you can get into that, but even San Francisco city government is a hard thing to kind of get your foot into. Sometimes you have to take tests and know people and et cetera. So, but I should mention, city government. San Francisco Fellows is like the city government program for San Francisco if you wanted to work in city government there. Capital Fellows is the one that's at the California state level. I've already mentioned New York City Urban Fellows. Presidential Innovation Fellows is a unique program at the federal level. They're looking for people interested in innovation, which I'm sure is sorely needed in DC. So these are just a few examples, but you can even look in the database by state government, local government, federal government, because we have tags on fellowships if you're looking at that. And again, you might find something that says you have to have a master's or that sort of thing, but bookmark it because it could be something that you sort of just keep in mind. Now, teaching fellowships. Have any of you thought about going into teaching as a service? Okay, great. I actually, you may not be an education major. You may not have thought about teaching. However, there's a lot of teaching fellowships that are looking to recruit people into teaching because obviously we have so many teacher shortages. And you probably heard of programs like Teach for America. Actually, my senior year, I had applied for Teach for America too, and got into the New York City program. So I was choosing between that and the Urban Fellows, and I chose the Urban Fellows. But what's great about the Teaching Fellows is that you'll get teacher training, you'll be in a cohort, you're not just kind of individually trying to go out and get into teaching. Often it'll provide funding and resources toward getting your master's degree, which is necessary in a lot of teaching jobs. And I'm talking about at the K through 12 level. But the thing you should know is that these placements are often in under-resourced schools. So they're looking for super enthusiastic, like bright young faces to come into these schools. But I do remember when I did my Teach for America interview, they were like, you will have a breakdown your first year. So they said, just be aware of what you're getting yourself into. I don't know. I don't think I was probably that prepared for something like that, but I do have a lot of friends that went through Teach for America and had an extraordinary experience, and some of them are still working in education policy. Others have gone on to go to business school or work in companies, government. So it doesn't necessarily tie you into this track forever, but if it's something you're thinking about and you're interested in education, this is a great way to go. You can also do teaching fellowships at mid-career. So if, it's just something to keep in mind if you were, let's say you're working in a laboratory for 10 years and you just got really sick of lab work. There's tons of teaching fellowships looking for people with STEM backgrounds, science, technology, engineering, math, to go into teaching because there's an even mostly severe shortage in STEM people teaching positions. So that's just the ins and outs of that. I should also mention in terms of teaching fellowships, there's also English teaching abroad, which is another sort of level of fellowship. So Fulbright has this Fulbright English Teaching Award. The Fulbright Awards the deadline's already passed. They're really early in the year. They're in October. However, you could still apply up to 5 years out of undergrad. So if you thought about going abroad, that's another way to do it as an English teacher. Now for that, they look for people to have some teaching experience. It doesn't have to be English teaching. It doesn't have to be anything. But if if it was something you were interested in, this like in this next year, it might be worthwhile to work towards getting some teaching experience as a tutor, working with kids, working as a research assistant, whatever that is. So these are just a couple. Teach for America, you've probably heard of. And the Woodrow Wilson Teaching Fellowships are actually really prestigious. And they have like Nobel Prize winners that have done the teaching fellowships with the National Fellowship Foundation. So I think this is an actual Woodrow Wilson Fellow here. So he's working with some students. So that's another thing to consider. Now, these might also be categorized under education in the database. So if you're interested in those, take a look in the education discipline. Next, there's the international fellowships, where your work placements are in developing countries usually, although not necessarily always. So again, these are short-term work placements at a nonprofit, maybe working at a school abroad, other organizations, and you're working with or alongside local staff. So, like a famous one is Peace Corps. You may have heard of Peace Corps. Anyone considering Peace Corps applying? A couple? Okay. So that's kind of like the most well-known international fellowship. You go abroad for 2 years. There's many other ones that can be alternatives. There's volunteers in Asia. There's just several service-oriented fellowships, Princeton in Asia, Princeton in Latin America, Princeton in Latin America, Africa. There's like a whole bunch of different ones. So to find these, you just look in the public service, less than 5 years of work experience, and then, take North America off your filters and you'll find some of these. Now, keep in mind, a lot of people go into these fellowships and sometimes people are disappointed because the experience wasn't what they expected, or it didn't have as much infrastructure as they want. These fellowships really do require a high degree of like flexibility and self-sufficiency. So if you're someone that could like go backpack through Europe on your own for 3 months, like you'd probably be fine. You'll do well. If you're someone that's like needs a lot of reassurance and you're constantly asking your professors a million questions because you want to make sure you have it perfect and that sort of thing, maybe not the best situation for you. Because the thing is, when you go abroad into these fellowships, typically the fellowship staff are focused on the next cohort. Like when they'll send you out there with your training and your orientation, and then it's like you go and you do your thing. So just keep in mind, like they're looking for people who are really going to take it and be optimistic and be problem solvers as they go through their thing. So if you were upset, if you didn't like your placement, you individually might need to work to change it or work with a new group or figure out how to make the best of it. But a lot of people who go into this with the right mindset have an extraordinary experience. And you can gain language skills. It looks great on your resume. You have a bit of adventure. If you love to study abroad, this is a great way to extend that adventure. Now, typically, just living stipends only cover your necessities. They're based on local salaries. So you're not paying off student loans. You're not, having a lot of money for extra things on the living stipend. But usually it's fine for living and sometimes on the international fellowships, you can defer your student loans during that year. Just keep in mind, once you're looking for your post-fellowship job, that can be a little bit challenging from abroad. So just start it early. Start 6 months before your fellowship is ending. Work your network, figure out where you want to be, and just don't wait till like the last minute. So this is a couple of the ones that we help recruit for. So Princeton in Latin America, like I said, there's multiple different programs. These ones do have November deadlines, so it might be just a little too close to call, I think, for you to be able to apply this year. The American India Foundation Clinton Fellowship, this is a great fellowship in India where you're based in organizations, and they have a January deadline, so you'd have plenty of time to apply for something like that. So those are just a few examples. And then finally, the summer and the other short-term fellowships, you can spend a few weeks. So basically, it's like a paid internship, or you can do a service project with this grant that they provide you. Usually, these are only for enrolled or graduating students, so just keep that in mind. And then, so this could be your dream fellowship. Rather than going the unpaid internship route, you could do this. There is a lot of competition for the summer fellowships, but I'm going to give you some ideas for the application. Now, Stanford is eligible for the Davis Peace Projects grants, right? Have you guys ever had someone come through that? It's one of the, there's only like a certain number of schools that are eligible for this. This is a $10,000 grant to design a peace-related project anywhere in the world. So it's a really cool fellowship, as we call it, because that's something you could do next summer. The people have traveled to Armenia, Morocco. So that's like something that you would design yourself. And then this other one I showed you already, Urban Leaders Fellowship. That's to work in a city government. There's 9 cities you can choose from. They give you a stipend. You get to do high-level work. So there's lots of interesting summer fellowships. So just like I said, use that summer fellowship in the type, and you'll be able to find some ones. And again, definitely maybe spend this weekend looking, because the deadlines will be anywhere from like now to January, February. Before I get into application tips, do you guys have any questions about like these types or anything like that? Yeah. Okay. All right, application tips. Now, this is the application tips. So I kind of figured some things out on my own when I was applying to competitive fellowships over the years. But the other thing, from talking to hundreds of fellowship winners, I kind of found some like common themes about how people went about their application. So I thought, okay, there's something to this. This isn't just luck or just this. But I do call this insider because it's something that's not spelled out anywhere. Like no one tells you this, no one teaches. So I'd like to give some people some ideas. Now, if you can get good at creating a competitive and winning application, you can actually apply these skills to all sorts of things. Getting into grad school, getting a new job, pitching a promotion, pitching your company that you're going to start. So being able to understand and think about the fellowship selection committee and even the graduate school selection committee, what they're looking for, and how you set yourself up for success is like a really important skill that you can use in all sorts of facets. So number one thing I tell people is align your goals. It's not actually about your goals. It's about the fellowship organization's goals. So what do I mean by this? Understand the organization's mission. So if you're going on a program like Princeton in Latin America, you got to understand what the mission of the program is. So it's not really to provide you an awesome, cool, fun experience in Latin America. It's actually because they're trying to put fellows working toward maybe it's poverty, maybe it's a housing issue, maybe they're looking for I know the Fulbright mission is to actually build bridges among the U.S. and other countries. So I think it's really important that you understand the mission so that you can speak to it in your application. Now, often they'll just say right on the website what their mission is. So think about this. They're funding these fellows because they want to achieve some greater goal. So what is that? If they don't specifically say it, look at what they've previously funded, the people they funded, the projects, where they came from, what they're doing, and also look at what they brag about. So the reason I didn't, when I was applying for the New York City Urban Fellows Program, I heard one of the directors talking about, we had like 80% of fellows go on to work in city government long term. And that's when I realized, the mission is to get young graduates to work long term. So I talked about it in my application that was something I wanted to do. So it's the same thing with Fulbright. Their goal is to build bridges between the US and other countries. I read one Fulbright applicant's project, which is awesome. He was going to do this really unique cancer research in the UK at a university that's like the leading university in that area. And he was saying, it'd be great for Fulbright to fund this unique cancer research because Fulbright would want to invest in this. But I had to tell them, Fulbright, their mission is not to invest in cancer research. Their mission is to build bridges among the US and, say, the UK. So what you need to really focus on in your application is talking about how is your collaboration with the UK university, how is that going to build bridges between the US and the UK? And he got that fellowship. So I think it's, just keep that in mind if you can touch on it. And it also shows a level of kind of maturity and understanding. Sometimes people get too caught up talking about, I've done all these things and I want to do all these things. And they don't talk about how they're going to help the organization advance their goals. So it's a kind of a self-awareness about the opportunity itself. The next thing I say is be specific about your post-fellowship goal. I still don't know what I want to do with my life long term. And so probably a lot of you have a lot of ideas about, job tracks, career ideas, different passions, different interests. You might love art, but you also love science. You might love education, but you're also interested in engineering. So when you're in your fellowship application, you don't want to talk about this fellowship as an opportunity to explore one of many areas that I might be interested in doing. What you want to talk about is how the fellowship is going to help you achieve a very specific post-fellowship goal, because they want to know, why are you applying? Why do you want to come to this particular location, and why right now? So if you don't have a compelling reason, if it's just, I'm exploring, I'm interested, or just I've done so many great things, why not? You have to think about, again, what they're trying to achieve. So let's say you're interested long-term in going to graduate school. Rather than just saying, after this international fellowship in India, I want to get a graduate degree. You should actually talk about, pick a school. I want to get a graduate degree at Stanford University's School of International Affairs. Is there one here? I don't know. Wait. I know like Georgetown University has like a foreign service school or something like that. I want to go to this school to do this program, and I'm applying to this fellowship because I'm going to get cultural, language, research, managerial skills specifically in this country with this group that's going to help me get to that goal. Now, it's okay if you have multiple goals, but you really need to build your compelling application story. And it should be an authentic goal. I mean, it should be a school that you do want to go to. It should be something that you could see yourself doing in 2 to 5 years. But the more specific you are, the more compelling your application will be. So think about the fellowship is supposed to be the hero in your story, as I say. So you talk about your background, then you talk about in 2 to 5 years, I want to be doing this specific thing. And then the hero is the fellowship. With this fellowship, I would be able to learn this, get this, build this network, and achieve these things that will help me get into this particular graduate program, or get into this particular career track, or work for this particular organization. So think about that. Just be really specific. And to be honest, it's actually easier to write your personal statement when you have your very specific goal. And you can talk about the very specific things you're going to learn, the specific people you're going to meet, and it's actually easier to write. So for my various things, I would talk about, Urban Fellows, I talked about working in New York City long-term, which was a goal at the time that I had. As you can see, I'm not doing that now, but I'm actually still like a really active alumnus of the program. I mean, nobody held it against me that I didn't work in New York City long-term. So you don't have to worry that you've set something in stone because you put it in your application either. So just make that clear and compelling argument. These are just a couple things. So this is the question to answer. What will this fellowship provide you that you cannot get anywhere else? So think about all your alternatives. Rather than doing your fellowship in Washington, D.C., maybe you're just working in your normal job or doing a graduate program. But so what is it about that particular thing that you're going to get that you can't get elsewhere? So if you're going abroad, maybe you're getting specific language skills, cultural skills that you need to do your doctoral research. Subject matter expertise is another thing. I mean, subject matter expertise, I want to be a subject matter expert in this so that I can get this graduate degree, get this doctoral degree, work in this particular organization, work in this very specific subdiscipline. In all cases, you're going to get a bigger professional network through your fellowship. So mention the professional network that you'll gain that you can't get elsewhere. This just helps you to solidify that argument. So at the end, if someone's reading your personal statement, ask your friend, mom, professor, did I explain why I want this fellowship? Ask them, is it clear to you? And if they're kind of like, well, yeah, then you need to go back to the drawing board and add in as the specific details. That's just is what gives your application that edge. I already mentioned this before about speaking to former fellows. I found that a key difference between people that won fellowships and people that didn't is that the people that won had talked to former fellows. I'm sort of like a sort of generalist fellowship expert, as you might say, but they are the ones that can really tell you about the specific opportunities. So I couldn't tell you what the Clinton Fellowship experience is like, or even what the selection committee is looking for, because I haven't done the fellowship. But the former fellows will know. So you can ask them, what made your application stand out? What do you think the selection committee is looking for? How did you find your host institution in that country if you need to do that? It's actually, these days with technology, it's really easy to find people. But I think it's always best, rather than cold email, you can do that if you have to, but it's best to get an introduction. You're looking at someone that knows hundreds, thousands of former fellows. So look for me on LinkedIn. You can connect with me. Say, hey, I was at your Stanford talk. I'd love to connect with you. LinkedIn is a great way to find people that you know who know other people that you're trying to meet. So the first and foremost thing, you can always contact the fellowship organization. They may have fellows who are ambassadors for the program. LinkedIn, then again, is the other great way. So if you connected to me and you see, oh, Vicki's connected to this Fulbright fellow in Morocco, or Vicki knows this Clinton fellow, then you can say, hey, Vicki, can you please introduce me to such and such? I'm applying. And I'll do that. So that's another great way. And you might have professors, you might have, this great group of the career advisors. They probably know lots of people that are former fellows. The other thing you can see is if the university has former fellows from Stanford that of that program too. So again, either this career office or I think the separate fellowships office might know who those alumni are and get you a personal introduction. But really, if you had to send a cold email, often you dig up people through LinkedIn or even just find people's contact through the blogs and other things. Just send them a brief message. Tell them you're applying to the fellowship. A little bit, I'm a Stanford student. I'm interested in this topic. Would you be willing to speak with me briefly about the application process? And then if they say yes, be sure to have a few questions prepared. They'll be busy too. So just don't go into the conversation with this. So how did you win this thing? Have some really specific questions prepared. And, also read up on them a little bit. What did they do there? What's their background? Because that will help you develop your questions. The whole purpose, though, really is to get those insights that you need to give your application an edge. So ask them about the interview process. Ask them about what they proposed, how they did it, what made them stand out. And then you get those little secrets that they can share. Now, you guys are all set to apply for fellowships in the next 3 months.
Nice.
So first, search the database. Go deep. Make yourself a coffee and sit down and do it. Bookmark the fellowships of interest. You can go to a website. You can find more information, read up on the fellowship. Obviously, put the deadlines on your calendar. In the database, it'll be marked as estimated or confirmed for most of them. If it's estimated, that means they haven't really confirmed when the next deadline is, so you also may need to keep track. We do the estimated deadlines based on the previous year's deadlines, but sometimes these organizations surprise us and they say, oh, we're not in June this year, we're in March. So if it's something you really want, you may also want to get on their individual mailing list to be sure that you don't miss it. Now, we have a new ProFellow member network. So I give all sorts of courses on personal statements, recommendation letters, and I've housed all of this inside a new member network that's housed at ProFellowMN.co. So I have bi-monthly live courses. I do office hours if you want to have questions. It's just like usually there's just a couple people in there asking like, oh, I'm looking for this, or I'm having a really hard time figuring out who my last recommendation letter should be from. What do you think? People even ask me career advice. Should I do a graduate degree versus PhD? Also inside you can get introductions to fellowship winners. You can meet some of them tonight because some of them are coming to dinner. And or you can just ask me directly inside the network. But it's also great, like if you're working on your applications, and this includes graduate school applications as well, you can get advice fast. So you can message me, you can message alumni, and people will respond. So the next course, if you guys are in the process, is going to be next Friday, Secrets to Getting Extraordinary Recommendation Letters. So I'm going to give you like the secrets to that. Oh, I haven't talked, well, most of you are in college now, but like some of us that hadn't talked to our professors in 10 years, how do I get that academic recommendation from this person I didn't talk to 5 years ago or 10 years ago? My boss is super, super busy. I think they like me, but I don't know if they'll write me this letter. What should I do? I kind of had like a weird experience with this one person, but I really need their all sorts of, I'm going to cover it all in this next one. there is a cost to this. I'll quickly tell you, it's $49.95 a month or $299 a year. But if you guys email me, I'll give you a free trial to get in and take a look around. Because here's the thing, ProFellow readers win fellowships. These are just a smattering of some of the people that have won fellowships through our site. FewScore Fellows, Fulbright Fellows, International Fellows, Media Fellows. So that was just a little pitch for the new network. But we have, like I said, there's tons of free stuff on the website too. So it's you can, with your own time and resources, you can find most of this on your own. So what questions do people have for me? That was a lot of information. Go ahead.
So I'm a senior and I'm started deciding between fellowship or job.
Mm-hmm.
I know I definitely want to go to grad school, but like you're saying, I think I need more experience to really like pinpoint what I would actually want to study.
Sure.
What are your opinions on whether like fellowship or job is the right thing to do afterward? Or like pros and cons of both?
Oh, yeah, sure. So the question is, should I do a fellowship or job post-graduation? Like what's pros and cons? Well, the thing is with the fellowships, they're prestigious. So they do help, they give you a network right away. So unlike an entry-level job that you might get out of undergrad, you'll already have like a level of prestige through the fellowship. You might have a cohort experience, professional development. So it really sets you up to have a network. So even though it's short-term and you're thinking, oh, there's not that long-term kind of job security in that, it's actually a really, really kind of great jumpstart. And typically, you're going to be doing stuff that's more challenging than a typical entry-level job in the fellowship. They also have kind of different, like right now is when you should be applying to fellowships, and you would probably hear if you got in the spring. Whereas jobs, it's probably a little bit early to apply for jobs. Except, I don't know. I mean, what's recruitment like these days on the campus?
It depends, like for large corporations, like
The big ones are
tech,
recruiting now.
finance,
Yeah.
consulting, they're basically, a lot of that recruiting is already over.
Yes, yeah.
It's mostly fellowship season now until February.
Right.
And if you're looking for jobs in the social sector especially and in local government, pretty much your time frame is mostly spring quarter.
Right.
Because you're going to be looking for things that have immediate openings. Except government, yeah, they have immediate openings, but it takes 6 months to.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like yeah, that's true. Government jobs can take a long time to process. But I say apply to everything. I mean, why not keep your options open? Apply to the fellowships, apply to the jobs. You'll find out in the spring if you got a fellowship. And then if you didn't, you still, can apply for jobs. The only thing you can't do is in the spring apply for fellowships that would start in summer or fall because you'll kind of miss the application. I think maybe I'm a bit biased. I think fellowships give you a huge head start on your career. But some people find really incredible entry-level jobs as well. But the job hunt these days is pretty gnarly, isn't it? From what I've heard, from what I've read for this generation. So
If you need help with the job search, come see us.
these are the experts,
Yeah,
the job
you can
search
make an
experts, right?
appointment on Wednesday and talk to us, yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions? I'd be really interested to hear if any of you actually do get into one of the fellowships too. So, well, here's the thing. There's this form that they would love for you to fill out talking about the workshop. So you can give that to Andrew afterwards. And Andrew, I don't know, you can email them my email address if you want to, for them to connect with me directly.
Yeah.
Like I said, you should connect with me on LinkedIn. Just mention who you are because you'll need my email address to be able to link with me on LinkedIn. So you can provide that, yeah.
So you can fill out those evaluation forms. That always helps us make sure that we continue to do better, right? That we're continuing things that are going great, improving things that could be better. We fill that out, and then we're gonna have a brief break.
Mm-hmm.
Food should be here about 5 o'clock. Dinner's here at 5, and then we're gonna talk about networking.
Oh, yes. So we have some fellows that are coming this evening from a lot of different programs. So we have an Aspen Institute fellow, multiple Fulbright fellows. We have a Mendenhall fellow who's working at the USGS right around the corner. So what I'm going to have them do is put on their name badge that they're a fellow and what fellowships they did. So you can introduce yourself to some of them, and they're interested to meet all of you as well. So it's just a good chance. Like I said, ask them about, here's your chance. Ask them, what made your application stand out? How did you get started in this path? Some people have won multiple fellowships too.